Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 8 of What If Naruto Was the Prince of Olympus. If you guys enjoy this what if, and want to see part 9 of it, comment down below and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. Check out my new videos of My Hero Academia what ifs in my second channel, and give it some love as well. Link is in the description. And go ahead, and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Olympus was never a quiet place. Mr. Brunner wheeled out of the elevator, the only way to go from the mortal world to the mountain floating above. He looked around and saw that the tension on Olympus was really high. Not only it could be felt in the air, but the faces of the nature spirits around the area spoke it all, letting him know how bad was the situation. The Latin teacher of Yancy Academy stood up from his wheelchair and slowly, from the waist down, his body began to change. He continued to stand up. His waist kept getting longer, rising above his belt, taller than any man. The front of an animal appeared with muscle and coarse white fur. A leg came out of the magic wheelchair, long and knobby-kneed, with a huge polished hoof. Then another front leg, then hindquarters, and then the box was empty, nothing but a metal shell with a couple of fake human legs attached. This was Mr. Brunner's true form. He was the immortal centaur Chiron, the trainer of the heroes. Chiron never thought he would need to come to Olympus around this time, especially when the gods already had their yearly winter solstice meeting some months ago. Olympus went into a state that he had never seen before. Even before Zeus's master bolt was stolen by the mysterious thief, he could see there was something going on among the Olympian Council, and it wasn't something good he could tell. But he felt that they would need to know about the owner of the kunai. He didn't return to camp and inform Mr. D about this first, but went straight to Olympus, thinking that the king of the gods, and the whole council should hear it from him directly. Getting into the throne room, Chiron wasn't surprised to see the 12 thrones were empty, and no Olympians were inside the room. Sitting beside the main hearth was the kind goddess Hestia, poking the fire with a long fire stick, looking into the fire with a soft smile on her face. Lady Hestia. Chiron bowed his head to her. Good evening. Chiron. Hestia turned her head to the centaur and smiled. Great night, isn't it? She asked, and at that moment, Chiron got the feeling she knew the reason he came here for. Yes, Lady Hestia. Great night. His mind already formed the perfect story to tell the Olympians. Since he was watching out for the Percy boy, who he got the feeling to be the son of one of the big three, telling Zeus about him wouldn't be a good idea. Bringing out his bow, Chiron notched an arrow and shot it into the sky above. Thunder rumbled in the sky before 12 Olympians flashed into the throne room on their respective throne. What is it, Chiron? Zeus asked with a growl. Why do you summon us? This wasn't the best time for anyone to summon the Olympian Council. His son was missing, and to make it worse, the Master Bolt was stolen, and Zeus was almost sure that his older brother Poseidon was the one who stole it. How? Definitely by using a demigod. It wouldn't be a surprise if Poseidon broke their oath. My deepest apologies for bothering you and the council, Lord Zeus. Chiron pulled the kunai out from his shirt pocket, making almost all Olympians gasp in shock. But I think you should know about this. Aphrodite was in her own state of shock. Kunai could only belong to one person only, and that was the Prince of Olympus, Naruto. But before she could speak a word, in the corner of her eyes she saw Ares looking at her with his flaming eyes behind those sunglasses of him. The goddess of love wisely kept her mouth shut. Usually someone like him wouldn't be a problem, but she was weak right now, still stronger than the minor gods, but she was definitely weaker than the Olympians, even Ares. Where did you find it? It was Hera who asked that question, but it was more like a shout, completely standing up from her throne. At Metropolitan Museum of Art, a demigod was attacked by a monster, but it was killed before it could do anything to the boy, Chiron said. I returned shortly after and found this weapon in the wall. Artemis. Impossible. The moon goddess defended herself by standing up from her throne, saying that with a steel-hard tone, even though she was facing her father. I had my hunters, and even myself, search every single corner around New York and we couldn't find him. There's no way Uzumaki is still here. Apparently you didn't search carefully. Enough, Hera said with a hint of anger in her voice. Don't question my hunting skills, Hera, Artemis retorted angrily. It was bad enough when she, the goddess of the hunt, the best tracker on Olympus, couldn't find a single boy for 2 years straight. Now with his weapon popping up in the country she carefully searched. It was like that idiot blonde was putting salt into her wound. Watch your tongue, Artemis, Zeus thundered. Hera is right. You didn't search carefully enough. Continue searching for Naruto and stop whatever you're doing, so you can focus on this task. The king of the god released a heavy sigh before saying, my son is more important. This statement made Chiron, the one who was completely oblivious of Naruto's existence, whiten his eyes in shock. Lord Zeus, what do you mean your son? His eyes turned to Hera for a moment. You couldn't have. No, Chiron, I didn't break my oath. Zeus shook his head, and Hera's expression saddened. The truth is. While Chiron listened to the story of Naruto, a frown made its way to Hestia's face. She knew Naruto better than anyone, even his parents. 2 years of watching over him let her understand her nephew more than anything. She was a little surprised someone like him, who was on the path of hiding from the Olympians, could carelessly leave his weapon back like that. Maybe there was a reason behind this action of his, or maybe he just randomly forgot to pick up his weapon. Whatever it was, it didn't matter now because Hestia had been watching the situation on Olympus. A war between family members could break out at the next winter solstice. Olympus needed Naruto more than ever. It was time for him to return. It was around 6 o'clock in the evening, and the college students were on their way back to school. Sitting for hours on the bus, Naruto had nothing to do other than turn on the iPod and listen to the music. Though he didn't have to listen to it alone, because Caitlin was in the mood for some music as well, so she borrowed one of his headphones, and the two were listening to one of Caitlin's most successful songs. Both Naruto and Daniel, with the help of Caitlin, had finished their assessment report, and didn't have to worry much from now on. Naruto couldn't help but admit that this was a very fun day. Other than Daniel, he didn't have many friends in this world, and never hanged around with anyone, and only got excitement every time Hestia brought him to elemental nations to visit his friends. Getting a friend who was a girl like Caitlin actually wasn't something Naruto never thought before, but adding her into his more normal life here in the mortal world was indeed one of the best decisions he had ever made. He never hanged around with any girl like Caitlin, but she did bring some new colors to his everyday life. They usually tried to give him a punch on his head when he did something stupid, Sakura, or tried to make him remember as many details in a book as possible, Athena. Not to mention girls like Artemis or Zoe, and even Hinata were very hard to handle. Plus, her songs were all good, and he could listen to them hundreds of times, and yet he didn't feel tired of them. Naruto suddenly shuddered, more and he would turn out to be like Daniel, a super fan of Caitlin. Hey Kate, you. He suddenly got an idea, and turned his head to look at her, but stopped when he saw that the girl had fell asleep with an open book lying on her thighs. Smiling softly, Naruto reached his hand out, and removed the headphone from her left ear. The bus's air conditioners were working rather strongly, so it was pretty cold inside. Naruto then grabbed a cover from the cabin above, gently put it on Caitlin's body to keep her warm before returning to his seat. It was raining heavily outside, which by now wasn't much of a surprise to Naruto anymore. The weather was acting very strangely, and he got the feeling that the Olympians were the reason behind this. Naruto doubted that he was the reason behind this sudden change in weather, because 2 years ago, around 2 or 3 weeks after he left Olympus, the weather wasn't even this bad. The only chance for him to know what was going on was through Hestia. At her next visit he was definitely going to ask her about this. Wait. Naruto sat straight up when his bus suddenly turned left. As far as he could remember, it needed to go straight to return to Boston. Oi driver, where are you going? But he didn't get a reply. Instead he kept on driving. Naruto began to get frustrated because he was getting farther and farther away from the right road. If the driver was a bus robber, then he was about to find out that he robbed the wrong bus. Don't worry, he's driving the right direction. His soft and warm tone stopped Naruto from standing up. Looking to the side, his eyes widened when he saw Hestia sitting on the seat at the other side of the bus. Auntie, what are you doing here? Naruto asked in surprise. Not that he wasn't glad to see her after a few months without his favorite aunt coming to visit him, but to see her right here on the bus with him was a surprise. Good evening, Naruto. She smiled warmly at him. How are you? I'm good, auntie. Naruto nodded his head. What about you? It's been months since your last visit. I hope everything is alright up there. Sadly, Hestia looked down with a sad face. Everything is not alright. With the tone Hestia was using, Naruto knew that things weren't going well on Olympus around this time. What happened? Your father's weapon, the Master Bolt, was stolen at last year's winter solstice. Hestia turned to Naruto and said seriously, and he feels that his brother, Poseidon, is the one who stole it. What the? Why? I mean, does he have any proof? Hestia shook her head. Great, just great, Naruto scolded, crossing his arms across his chest, and leaned back against his chair. As you know, your father is rather paranoid about his siblings, especially Poseidon. Hestia said, he opposed Zeus many times in the past. Also, with your disappearance, the king of the gods is desperate more than ever. And you can understand that being the first Olympian, he would feel suspicious of his own brother. The two have been arguing back and forth for months, threatening war to each other, and you can see that the weather is responding to their anger. But Poseidon definitely wasn't the one who stole it, was he? There are rules stopping us from stealing each other's symbol of power, and I believe that Poseidon isn't the thief in this matter, Hestia said surely. But you know, my brother is too proud to try convincing Zeus of that. Damn, I really want to punch some sense into him right now, Naruto muttered. Zeus has demanded that Poseidon return the bolt by the summer solstice. That's June 21st, 3 weeks from now. What about Poseidon? Did he say anything about it? Naruto asked. Poseidon wants an apology for being called a thief by the same date. I tried to talk some sense into them, but clearly both of them were too prideful to understand the situation, Hestia said sadly. The Master Bolt must be found, and returned to Zeus before the solstice, or there will be war. Naruto sighed. He could see the end of the world coming nearer and nearer with each day passing by. Zeus and Poseidon weren't the best kind of brothers he could find, especially when the younger became the king of the gods and ruler of the sky, while the older one was only given the sea, and that's all. It's time for you to return, Naruto, Hestia said softly. We need you more than ever. Auntie. Naruto looked at her, unsure of what to do. Part of him wanted to return to help his father, while part of him didn't want to return, and would like to stay away from the trouble his father brought himself, just because he was too paranoid. The bus then suddenly stopped and the door opened, in the middle of nowhere, and it was raining pretty heavily outside. This is the road that will lead you to Camp Half-Blood. Naruto widened his eyes. You do not need to return to Olympus, but if you come near the camp the Olympian Council will know about you. Naruto nodded and stood up from his seat, not before leaving a clone behind to act like him for a few hours in case Caitlyn wake up. Percy Jackson and his satyr guardian, Grover Underwood, are also on the way there. Hestia stood up from her seat and came to stand beside Naruto. You might meet them on the way there. I understand, Auntie. Naruto nodded his head, before turning to the goddess of the hearth, but you must know that I might or might not stay at that camp for long. I know, Naruto. Hestia then put a hand on his shoulder. If you need anything, just say my name out loud, and I will be there to guide you. Thank you, Auntie. Naruto grinned. Phew, this is going to be so cold. Naruto looked at the rain outside. You're shinobi, right? This won't stop you from finishing your mission. You got that right, Auntie. Hestia. Naruto smirked, but then turned to her. Is there anything more I should know about? I will fill you in on the details when you finally get to the camp. There were a lot of things Naruto needed to know about Olympus's conditions, but that could wait until he finally got to Camp Half-Blood and claimed by his parents. Naruto shot out of the bus and disappeared into the rain in a blink of an eye. Running through the forest with neck-breaking speed, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what it would feel like to return to this godly world. The Prince of Olympus was returning home. Naruto was able to cross the forest in a few minutes with his speed, getting closer and closer to Camp Half-Blood. He moved from tree to tree with such speed that even the norm light could hardly follow, yet his breath remained the same, and Naruto hardly felt any tiredness. As he got closer to the camp, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what it would feel like when he got there. Hestia told him about the camp long ago. Since gods weren't the most responsible parent in the world, their children lived their childhood with their mortal parents. However, those times weren't very pleasant because monsters would start to hunt them down when they're old enough. The stronger the godly parent, the stronger the demigods, and the more they will attract the attention from the monsters. So the camp was built. There, the demigods were safe from the dangerous myth monsters, trained and learned how to survive in the world their parent brought them to. Satyrs were sent all over the world to find them, and bring them to the camp. However, not all demigods were able to get close to camp, some didn't make it in time, and were killed by the monsters. There was magical protection around the camp that would stop monsters and mortals from getting inside. Naruto was no exception to this kind of barrier, but he already figured out a way to get in. Then, when he was 10 miles away from the camp, something interesting caught his attention. Naruto stopped. Because of his shinobi skills, the blonde quickly and soundlessly hid himself behind a tree. 10 feet away from him, there was a dark figure standing alone in the forest, holding a flashlight in his left hand, but already turned it off before Naruto could see the face of the mysterious person. A thin mist appeared in front of him. Buyer's message, Naruto thought. Did you hide them? The mysterious figure asked, and from the voice Naruto could tell that he was male. I already hide them. A deep and grumbly voice could be heard within the mist. Naruto couldn't recognize the voice, but there was just something familiar to it. Don't worry, no one will be able to find the lightning bolt and the helm. Naruto widened his eyes in surprise. The lightning thief, he thought. This man was probably the one who stole his father's weapon. But what about the helm? Naruto was a little confused at this. What happened to your face and your voice? The man asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Rough night. That damn woman is gaining back her power. The man in the mist scolded angrily. You and your lover having a fight? That's unheard of. The man snickered. Anyway, we will leave it like that for now. Let the gods destroy each other. What about him? The man in the mist spat angrily. The so-called Prince of Olympus. Naruto soundlessly hid himself deeper behind the tree when his title was mentioned. My lord has a special plan for him. If we play our cards right, we can gain a powerful ally, but if not, then we kill him, right in front of his parents' eyes. With that, the mist disappeared and the mysterious man disappeared. He was fast and appeared to understand the ways around this forest, so he already disappeared without a trace. Naruto walked out from behind the tree and quickly left the area. For some reason, he wasn't able to sense a single energy signature from that man, as well as able to catch the certain scent of demigod. Which was very strange because even mortals emitted a hard-to-notice amount of energy, and Naruto could almost instantly recognize demigods when they are around. Whoever this person was, he knew about Naruto's power and figured out a way to hide himself from Naruto. And his partner, the man in the mist, looked like he was the one who was keeping the Master Bolt and the helm. He could even be the one who told the man in the dark about him. He seriously needed someone like Athena around. Artemis scolded hatefully when she returned to her hunt's camping side. That boy, who does he think he is? she roared and kicked over a table in her camp. This was a serious blow to her pride. The proud goddess of the hunt was outran by a male, a son of Zeus and Hera no less. Artemis was 100% sure she searched every corner of New York, because it was the first place she would think to look, and yet his freaking kunai just appeared inside Metropolitan Museum of Art, the biggest museum in New York. How one of the most idiot boys in the history in her opinion would need to go to an art museum was outside of her imagination, but clearly that boy was toying with her. Lady Artemis. Zoe ran into her tent with her bow and arrow ready, looking around and saw Artemis standing beside a collapsed table. Are you alright? She heard the sound and thought monsters were attacking their camp, and was stupid enough to attack her mistress's tent. So she quickly grabbed her weapon and ran to her mistress's tent as fast as she could. No, I'm not so, Artemis snarled. The immortal lieutenant of Artemis's hunt was surprised when she saw her mistress lose her temper like that. I'm sorry to say this, but we're returning to New York to search for the Prince of Olympus again, she said venomously, like there was something so disgusting on the tip of her tongue. But I thought. Apparently, we missed a few places. Artemis shook her head, snapping her fingers, and made her bow and arrow appear on her shoulder. Fully geared up, Naruto Uzumaki is still at. But she suddenly stopped talking when Artemis felt a tingle at the back of her head. Closing her eyes, the goddess of the hunt put her hand down to the ground and focused her power into the palm of her hands. She could hear it from the ground, the sound of extremely fast movements, moving from tree to tree, before jumping down to the ground. The target kept on moving. Artemis could even tell how skilled this person was from just listening to the sound of their footstep from at least 1,000 miles away. Someone was getting close to Camp Half-Blood, and just stepped onto her sensor area. The bloodthirsty smirk made it to her face, when she opened her eyes, which glinted dangerously with the color of silver. So, wake the hunt up. Zoe nodded her head. Gather the wolves, we're going to hunt. What kind of hunt, Lady Artemis? Zoe already knew the answer, but she asked it anyway. Boy hunt. Excuse me. Naruto jumped on the massive stopping truck and asked the driver, can you tell me what the way to Long Island Lake is? The rain had stopped a few minutes ago, and Naruto already dried himself. The fastest road is across that forest, but there's a way around it. It will take you longer, but a lot safer. The driver pointed his hand to the left. You need me to give you a drive there? What's a young man doing out here at night anyway? Thank you very much. Naruto grinned and was about to open the door of the truck, when he suddenly saw a very familiar bright flash of silver. Multiple energy signatures, one of them was massive, a lot stronger than Naruto remembered, suddenly appeared within the forest before parting all around the forest. From the way they're moving, Naruto could tell that they're a group of very skilled warriors. His eyes suddenly caught a glint of silver and heard the sound of something piercing through the air. His hand raised up and caught the object before it could impale him through his chest with ease. It was a silver arrow. Artemis, Naruto muttered, snapping the arrow with his hand, and her hunt he finished. The goddess was probably very angry at him right now. Maybe it was time for them to settle their differences. You wanna play? Then so be it. Naruto turned his head to the side and dodged yet another silver arrow, almost unable to notice in the night aimed to his head. Boy, kid, where are you going? The driver poked his head out of the window and shouted, but Naruto already launched himself into the forest to the left. Pulling his forehead protector out from the inner pocket of his jacket, Naruto tied it tightly around his forehead while he was looking around for any sight of the hunters. They hid it well, but with his sensor power he could already tell where they were hiding. There were also traps all over the area. Naruto knew better than anyone just how powerful Artemis was. She wasn't a brutal fighter like Ares and not as smart as Athena, but she was amazingly skilled with her bow and arrow, not to mention incredibly skilled in close-range combat with those massive hunting knife of her. Not to mention her hunters were waiting for him. This was going to be a tough fight. But it wasn't like he couldn't handle it. Since Naruto was dying to test out the moves he learned from watching UFC on someone strong, someone like Artemis. Women or not, it would teach them you should never try to ambush Naruto freaking Uzumaki, one of the greatest pranksters ever. Good morning, ladies. Naruto shouted and went into sage mode, sending a powerful kick straight to a tree with so much force that the place where he kicked exploded. Two hunters shouted out in shock, and they had to leave the top of the tree, where they were hiding before it could collapse down to the ground. Unfortunately for them, Naruto was waiting for them. Turning around, he thrust his elbow into their gut, knocking them unconscious. Lying both girls on the ground, Naruto grabbed the bow and 3 arrows, jumping to the side to dodge an arrow shot at his feet. The blonde notched the arrows, and fired them with the same speed of the hunters. Artemis raised her hunting knife to dodge the incoming arrow. How Naruto was able to see her in the middle of the night like this was a mystery to the goddess of the moon. She knew very little about his powers, and almost cursed herself when she didn't think about asking Athena for some advice before facing him, not even once. Artemis easily pushed all the arrows away with just a simple movement of her wrist, but the goddess of the moon's eyes widened in surprise when she saw the tip of the kunai inches from her face. Artemis didn't have time to react when the kunai went past her face and caught her cheek. Wiping the itch away, Artemis gritted her teeth when she saw Naruto grinning smugly at her. "You're a prey now," she muttered dangerously and put 2 fingers into her mouth, whistling loudly. Naruto was grinning in satisfaction when suddenly, the ground underneath him stirred slightly. He stomped his foot onto the ground and pushed himself out of the way just in time, when a net shot up. But that wasn't the end. Naruto then heard the howling sound of a pack of wolves. He could feel them moving toward him from behind. "Yes, run," Artemis muttered with her eyes cold, looking at Naruto who was running with 12 wolves chasing closely behind him. Her wolves were the strongest, fastest, and deadliest kind of wolves, trained to catch and kill even the hardest targets, let alone a simple boy. Little did she know that she was falling into the footsteps of Naruto's previous opponent by underestimating him. Naruto took a leap, stomped his foot into a tree trunk, doing a backflip just in time, when a wolf got close to him, and tried to slash him with its sharp claws. "Welcome to Suplex City, bitch." Naruto grabbed the wolf around the waist and stomped both his foot on the ground, benching his back backward. Naruto then released the wolf, throwing it down to the ground hard enough to crack some of its bones, but not kill it. "Come on," Naruto shot up, punching a wolf on the side of its head, and sent it flying into a tree. "Come at me." He crossed his fingers and created 10 clones. Each of them took care of the wolves easily, before disappearing into smoke. This display of power made the hiding hunters a little nervous, but still put up their guard nonetheless. Naruto then pushed forward again. With kunai in hands, he blocked all the silver arrows coming at him. 2 hunters came out of the shadows and charged at him, one of them carrying a hunting knife, while the other carrying a spear. Naruto stopped for a second to jump, delivering 2 hard smacks to the back of their heads, knocking them out. He avoided all the traps, beat every hunter coming at him with ease. Naruto fought like a storm, pushing through the defensive lines with aggressive attacks. Though he made sure not to seriously hurt Artemis's hunters, just gave them enough beating to knock them out. All of it was done by his skills alone, not a single jutsu was used. "Out of arrows already?" he asked loudly when the wave of arrows finally stopped. Harley Zo jumped out from behind a tree and shot arrows at him with machine guns, unloading their bullet speed, but Naruto only moved his body to the side rapidly, dodging them all. "Prepare for..." But her mouth was shut tight the moment she took out her hunting knives and ready to face Naruto, who then walked past her as if she wasn't even there with his bangs shadowing his eyes. Sweat poured down from Zoe's forehead as she dropped her hunting knife with her eyes as white as dinner plates. The lieutenant of Artemis collapsed to her knees. Fear was the only thing that was on her mind. In a brief moment, when she looked at Naruto, Zoe could feel a massive amount of bloodlust in the form of a gigantic 9-tailed fox bearing its fangs down at her coming from Naruto. It flashed before her eyes faster than Zoe could blink, yet took away all her will to fight, and even broke her spirit. Naruto put the kunai back into his pocket. The fight with the hunters of Artemis was just a simple workout for him to stretch his muscles and bones for the upcoming big bad boss. Naruto trained, yes, but it had been 2 years since his last proper battle against anyone, and Naruto knew Artemis was going to bring up quite a fight with her power. "Need my help?" Kurama asked. "She might not be as strong as Kaguya, but Artemis is probably one of the strongest Olympians." "Thanks, but I can handle myself, Kurama," Naruto said, cracking his knuckles. "This will be fun," Kurama chuckled. "Make sure not to get beat around by her." "I will," Naruto said and stood in front of the camp's border, which was a clear and enlarged field. "I'm already done with your hunters, Artemis. If you want to settle our differences, then come down here, and we will get it done with." Almost instantly, Artemis responded to his call. Having the appearance of an 18-year-old teenager, the goddess of the moon jumped down from a tree branch and took off her bow and quiver, throwing them down to the ground. "First things first," Naruto said. "Why do you hate me so much anyway?" he asked. "You disappeared for 2 years," Artemis said, her voice cold and deadly calm. Naruto took out her hunters without breaking a sweat, and that was something not even an Olympian could do, proving the fact that he stood on equal ground against a primordial being and was literally stronger than most Olympians. But Artemis knew that she was a lot stronger than before. With the rate of divorce increasing over the past 2 years, because Hera didn't care much about her duty anymore, girls, mainly the daughters of the divorced family, were slowly losing their trust and love, and decided to choose the path of a mating. This made her became stronger than ever, brought me so much trouble, hiding in a place that not even I could find, made the other Olympians gods. Even the minor ones looked down on me and questioned my ability. She threw the hunting knife away much to Naruto's surprise, and got into a stance. "And yet, you're just a mere boy. You don't need them?" Naruto asked, pointing to the hunting knives. "I will beat you with your style," Artemis said. "Hope you will play fair in this match, because as far as I know, shinobi don't play fair." Naruto continued her words, nodding. "But I will make an exception this time. If I cheat with my ninja skills, then you will probably find me again with the hunting knife in your hands," Naruto said, and also took a stance, going into sage mode. Good if she wasn't looking at him directly with her eyes, she would have thought Naruto had completely disappeared. It was like he had become one with his surroundings, became one with nature itself. "Shall we?" Naruto asked, and Artemis was the one who attacked first, launching herself at him faster than the fastest animal jumped on its prey. But Naruto caught her punch with ease, and bended her arm around the elbow, pinning it against her chest, before sending a hard punch to her stomach. But like what he did, Artemis caught it easily. "I will beat you so hard that not even your mother could recognize you," she cried before headbutting so hard that even in Sage mode with skin as hard as rock, Naruto could feel his skull crack underneath the force of her brutal attack. Artemis took this advantage and charged forward, punching Naruto in his face rapidly, before sending her fist straight into his stomach. How she could hit him that hard without feeling pain from his hardened skin was out of his imagination, but from Hestia and the Greek mythology book, Naruto had learned that God's physical strength is particularly insanely strong. His father could lift a whole mountain with his hands, so Naruto expected no less from his half-sister. And there was also a story, where his father said he could pull all the gods, and the ground up with a rope. She was fast, and all he saw was a silver blur before his face was knocked to the side by a heavy blow. But clearly Artemis wasn't as fast as some of the opponents he fought in the past like the Raikages or Lee. It was just that she knew just the way to move to avoid his eyes. Ares, a war god, and yet he got nothing like Artemis. She wasn't only fast but also moving very gratefully, as if she was dancing around to avoid all of his attacks before countering with a bone-breaking kick or skull-cracking punch. But that was as far as she could go with him. Naruto smirked when he felt Artemis get behind him. Without the need to turn around, Naruto sent his elbows straight into her face, knocking Artemis back several steps, much to her surprise. "My turn." The Prince of Olympus wasted no time and turned around, starting to attack her aggressively with a torrent of punches of Toad Kata. Artemis didn't understand as she was knocked back and forth by Naruto. Even with the punches she dodged and already got away before it hit, there was still an invisible force smashing right into her face so hard that her vision became a little blurry. She was able to land a hit on Naruto. Even half the force she was using could take out an adult man, but it appeared to have little effect on him. Yet with each punch she stroked, the more pain she felt. Little did they know that the sound of fighting had alerted the securities around Camp Half-Blood, and woke up almost all the campers up, as they stood watching the fight between the goddess of the moon Artemis, and the unknown man behind the border of the camp, with eyes wide in awe. Naruto and Artemis crossed fists, punching each other's hand, creating a small shockwave that nearly knocked the campers on their backside. Looking into his eyes, Artemis could see that he was enjoying their fight, and even though she didn't admit it, she quite enjoyed it as well. "You're holding back," Artemis said after a moment of silence between them. "How do you know that?" "During the fight with Kaguya Otsutsuki, you used a different form than this," Artemis said, and Naruto laughed slightly. "What is so funny?" Nothing. Naruto suddenly jumped on her, with her head sandwiched between his thighs. He then twisted his body around, flinging Artemis down to the ground, much to her shock. "I'm not looking down on you, Artemis. Even now I'm respecting you and your strength." He raised his fist. But Artemis already sent her leg to the top of his head, making Naruto stumbling back in pain. "How so?" The goddess of the moon smirked before getting to her feet, glaring at him. "From what I heard, you give absolute no respect to the authority. Then how come you're respecting me?" She kicked him, but Naruto blocked by moving his head to the side. "Does feel like it," Naruto replied simply, before punching her in her chest. Artemis crossed her hand together, and used it to block Naruto's attack, but she was sent back several feet. "Clearly with that kind of tone, you're giving me no respect," the goddess of the moon smirked, returning back to her former stance. "You're a strong woman, Artemis. No one can deny that fact," Naruto said, getting in front of Artemis before she could even know it, and gave her a hard uppercut. "Sometime, you might want to know that not every male you see looks down at you, because you're just a woman." He took a strong leap and balancing himself above Artemis. "You don't need to prove to anyone that you're strong by acting tough or harsh in front of a male. You just need to be yourself." Naruto turned his body around in the air, and when they were close to the ground, he slammed his foot in Artemis's stomach just in time for her to back touch the ground, shattering the spot underneath her with his strength. The goddess of the moon cried out in pain and coughed out itcher when Naruto gave the finishing blow to her. That attack was harder than anything she ever felt in her life, and it made her body numb, refusing to answer the call of her mind. "I might have to get serious if you decided you want to go all out with the intent to kill me," Artemis, Naruto said to her, standing straight up with the orange pigmentation disappearing from his eyes. "But for now, do you accept your defeat?" Artemis scolded, closing her eyes before crying out, "Okay, I accept." She sighed. Next time she fought him, she would pay a visit to Athena to learn of everything Naruto was capable of to form a strategy in order to defeat him. Artemis felt relief. At least she was able to unleash 2 years' worth of pent-up frustration. "Okay, I will head to the..." Naruto was about to walk into the camp, when suddenly he saw the campers standing behind the border, looking at him with their eyes wide in shock. At the front was a white centaur, and he was Mr. Brunner, the Latin teacher. No one dared to say a word when suddenly, in a flash of white light, his mother appeared and ran at him, wrapped her arms tightly around his neck. "Naruto," she cried out in happiness, tears flowing down her cheeks. Finally, after 2 long years, she was able to hold him in her arms again. "Hey mom," Naruto said softly, putting his hand on her arm, and leaned his head slightly to the top of her head. Little did he know that his greeting to Hera made all the demigods' jaws drop to the ground. Another god teleported to the place, and a lightning bolt Zeus appeared, looking relieved when he saw his son standing in his mother's arms. "Naruto," he said. "We're going to have a few words with each other." OpNaruto pointed his hand to his father, saying calmly. Zeus only nodded his head. Naruto then returned his eyes back to the campers, and whitened when he saw Chiron starting to kneel on the ground, followed shortly by the god's children. They kneeled respectfully around him, with their head bowed. "All hail Naruto Uzumaki," Chiron announced loudly and strongly, son of the king and queen of the gods, Zeus and Hera, the prince of Olympus. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.